Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petra. This episode of Slam the Gavel is sponsored by CPS Protect Consulting Services. A child protective services case is one of the most frightening experiences for any parent. Don't face it alone. Face it with confidence with Urgent Assist by CPS Protect. You can have access to former CPS investigators to make sure you preserve your rights and protect your family. If you're facing CPS involvement and aren't sure where to turn, their child welfare consultants can help you. Visit cpsprotect.com/subscribe and enter the coupon code SLAMTHEGAVEL for 60% off your first year of Urgent Assist. And this is available in all 50 states. And I have another announcement. Bradley's mother, Narcus Golan, passed away in the fall of 2022. Bradley is autistic and needs structured routine and therapies he receives for his autism 6 days a week. However, Italy just entrusted Bradley to the Italian Social Services. If he is ruled to go back, he will face the next 3 to 4 years in the Italian foster care system where he can't speak or understand the language. He will then be taken away from the only family he has ever known, and we have Judge Ann Donnelly to thank for that. Please call Governor Hochul at 518-474-8390. That's Governor Hochul at 518-474-8390 to please keep Bradley here safe in these United States. Hashtag keep Bradley safe. Also, go to the site, pleasedoyourjob.com. We need 3,000 more signatures. That's pleasedoyourjob.com. And one last announcement. All Texas parents, please file detailed complaints to complaints@house.texas.gov to attention Chairperson Andrew Murr, State Texas Representative. This is time-sensitive urgent request. Also, CC yourselves in the email to keep a copy of the email for documentation purposes. Okay, I'm bringing back on one of my favorite guests, Claudia Ovalles. She was last on my podcast, April 30th, Season 4, Episode 86. She was also on previously Season 2, 46, Season 4, Episodes 33 and 86. And she was last on with Rael, Lapenta, and we were discussing the enforcement of the custodial interference laws that may have prevented Grayson's and Caden's law. And today we're going to talk with Claudia about House Bill 969, which authorizes a civil penalty to enforce child custody. I welcome you back on, Claudia. Boy, you have a lot to tell us. How did you get it done?
Hi, thank you so much for having me back. I'm glad to be here to share some of the efforts that we've done in Texas and the motivation to mirror some of these efforts in other states to help parents and kids out. So thanks again.
Oh, definitely, because this House bill, this is a big thing. And in fact, you were saying there were that this will take effect on the 1st of September 2023. And
yes.
There's 2 laws also going on.
Yes, it's House Bill 969 passed, and that's on enforcing a civil penalty or a municipality enacting an ordinance on creating a civil penalty for child custody orders. And then there's another law, HB 3025, and that's in regards to removing the statute of limitations on reporting custodial interference, and it also impacts the statute of limitations on parental kidnapping, kidnapping and aggravated kidnapping, actually. So they all line up together. So they're all in sync, actually. So it's very, very informative stuff for parents that are facing these issues. So.
Well, I wish this was happening here in Pennsylvania. That's not the case, but I'm glad you've got this done. How long did this take you to get this bill going, put together, and pushed through?
Well, this bill was introduced in the last legislative session in 2021. However, the bill died on the Senate floor on the last day of legislation. There was a quorum break where some House representatives walked out, and that actually impacted a lot of bills that were pending on the floor, including this one. And so to keep the momentum going and the concern alive, I just stayed on it as far as ensuring that legislators knew about it and keeping it in their heads, and that their staff was made aware, and then strategically planning on who was going to carry it, who the author would be, because we previously had a Democrat carry it and we knew that they would support it. So with the upcoming session, it was about strategically planning who could we introduce it to as a Republican, because we wanted bipartisan support to make it through. And that's what helped. It was just being selective in who would we choose, or who I choose. I say we, but it was a lot of me doing this by myself most times, because it's a lot easier to schedule a quick meeting than trying to coordinate with other parents, like, let's do this time on this day. And it started off that way, and I had some help at first with Dr. Petra Deeter, and then she dropped off to work on some other issues and concerns. And so I kind of kept on for probably a good I think about a year by myself. And I know Rael helped out at one time. She attended a meeting with me in Texas, and luckily I was able to file it in the Senate and the House, because what most people don't understand is that when you introduce a bill in both chambers, you're actually giving a better chance of one of the bills pulling through. And then when you collaborate with both offices, if one makes it through, then that representative on that other side can carry it and introduce it on into their chamber. So luckily that's what we were able to do. So I met with Senator Middleton, and I'll just tell you a little bit about him. He's a parent that often files equal shared parenting bills, but he transitioned from a House representative to a senator. So that was something that I thought of, is that he's going to want bills on the Senate side as a senator to file. And so I brought this one because it had a lot of support for the previous session, and introduced this. And one thing is that I didn't change the language, because it would be starting over.
Oh, yes.
And picking up and trying to get support again, because I made some type of adjustment or change to it. So I kept it exactly the same. And so then I had chosen him, and then some other senators just in case. And I talked to all of them. And then I had chosen a representative that was actually on the committee that these bills go through. And I discussed it with her. They worked on it. And at the last minute, they said, you know what, her legislative packet has changed, and she can't carry it after all, because she has too many bills. So it was a little discouraging. However, because I've been working with them, and that was Representative Valerie Swanson, they said, you know what, we can walk it down the hallway and see if another representative would introduce it for you. So they did, and they put me, and they told me who to connect with within that office. And so I followed up, and that was Representative David Cook, and his office said, sure, we'll talk it over. And finally they said, yeah, we'll carry it in. And so then I just got in touch with the representative from the last session. I said, look, I have a Republican who's going to carry it. Will you co-sponsor it or co-author it? And he said, absolutely, because then now it's a bipartisan bill, and we'll just push and push and push. And it was introduced early. A lot of parents don't know that you can't wait for the session to start. You have to start planning this in advance. And so when we were working on this for our legislative session is every 2 years. So as soon as our session ended and the bill died, it was constant, like just hitting the pavement, trying to get these meetings, keeping this momentum going. Wow. And getting more statistics, things like that, gathering all that together. And so when we got toward the early filing, which is about, I would say, November, October timeframe, they filed it, and it was filed December 12th, I believe. And the early filing begins in November. So basically the earlier you file a bill, the lower the number that you get. The longer you wait, you'll end up getting into the 3,000 bill number, 4,000 bill number. Yep. So we were at 969, and then our Senate bill was at 431. And so It was just about just working with them. And of course, a bill needs to be introduced into a hearing, and it's just staying on top of them, like, when are you going to introduce this bill? You know, things like that. And of course, when you go into legislative session, the governor has his own agenda of what topics they want to cover first. But some of these sessions have so many delays, and you know, it's only open for January 10th through about the end of May, right before Memorial Day. And you know, everybody's anticipating, like, let's go, let's get some really important issues addressed. And you know, other things sadly are prioritized above family issues. And it could be, you know, it could be the, you know, the energy, you know, here in Texas, we had a really bad snowstorm, and it affected the I don't know, the I guess the energy, ERCOT, whatever they call it, to house all this power, whatever that they do, the grid. And so that was a priority. They talk about, you know, the border, they talk about voting, and they talk about all these other things. But unfortunately, family issues are, as bad as they are not on the, you know, priority list, really. And then there's like CPS reform, and there's other things like that. But you know, a lot of parents are just waiting for these changes because they do impact so many families. And you know, there's hopes that equal shared parenting will come to Texas, and that has been a challenge. And we're always, you know, rooting for stuff like that. But this was something that I had been hoping for, because this was something that impacted me, and I wanted to see it changed. And I can, you know, make a lot of these meetings, but my focus needs to be on one thing at a time, because it's really hard to work full time and then to try to take on these meetings. And a lot of them I did during my lunch hour. A lot of them I took leave, and I would go to the Capitol for a day at a time. I'm an hour and a half away, and I'd go by myself. I'd meet other parents there. I'm also a part of the National Parents Organization, and we had a very active group in Texas. They were focused on child support reform and equal shared parenting, and I was bringing this on board. And they don't necessarily know this portion of it. I don't know all the details of equal shared parenting or child support reform, but we worked off each other, and it was about supporting the causes, because they're all connected, and we all, you know, we all want to see positive changes.
Yeah, that is so positive. What happened? I bet you celebrated. That was probably, you know, that's such a major win.
It was, and every step I got closer, it was just kind of staying on it. Like, okay, we still have to, you know, remain, you know, positive about it, try to keep the meetings going, getting the support. And I will say, from the last legislative session, there was 26 Republicans that voted against it. They voted no. So coming into it this session, we had to convince those 26 to support it. And I had met with a few of them, and a few disagreed with the language. And I was working closely with the representative that filed it last session. And he told me, just give me a list of who voted for it, against it, and I will talk to them. And by the end of this, it was unanimous. They had totally turned their vote around. And I have to, you know, give him a huge thanks for that, because some of these members I had actually spoke to, and they said, we're not going to support this. We're not going to do it. I had one in particular, and she says, well, you know, if this is something that mothers are doing to protect their children, we don't agree with enforcing it. And I said, but it's not that situation all the time. There are some parents, including fathers, that just don't comply with the court order. And we could see the concern, and there's stipulations in the law for that concern of releasing the child to a parent that may be, you know, a concern at the time. And so, but to punish the entire state just for that smaller percentage isn't helping kids. And so in the end, she voted for it. They supported it. And so it was amazing. It was an amazing feeling, because this was one of my goals going through everything that I had experienced, is like, if I could get a law passed, then that would be extremely meaningful to me on top of everything else that we're doing. And it was exciting. I could never make the hearings to testify in person. Unfortunately, they only give you a couple of days, and part of my job is that I travel a lot, and every time I was traveling, the hearing came up. So some parents showed up, and then when it went to the Senate, I was calling a Marine advocate, and I said, "Hey, Scott, can you be there? I need someone to testify for this bill." And he said, "I'll make it." And so I coordinated with the senator's office, and if you're invited to testify, they give you a little bit more than 2 minutes. And so they listed him as an invite to ensure that he would testify, and he showed up. And there was him and another mom who I used to work with, and I reached out to her and I said, "Hey, can you attend? It would be helpful if we had a mom and a dad that could testify." And then we also had the lobbyists who represent the Texas Family Law Foundation. They had testified for it the last session. So this session, they showed up and they testified for it. And they have a lot of influence, because they are constantly working with legislators on certain bills. And it made it through. And the good part was, in my city in San Antonio, we had a new House representative that came on board. And when I went to his office and told him about the concern, he said, "I'm going to co-sponsor it." So I had someone locally co-sponsor it. And then when it went through the Senate, one of my senators here locally, he went ahead and signed on, and he was thrilled that someone's finally doing this, because he had said many times, custody is weaponized, and the person that's getting hurt the most is the children. So it was really good. There's a video of it. I should have sent that to you, but he testified on that, and he said, "You know what, I'm going to sign on to this." And so he did. So now I had a bipartisan the House representation, and then I had a bipartisan Senate representation, and it just made it so much better that it was actually, it had progress and it had that traction, and we just had to see it through. And then at the end, you have so much time for it to be brought to the Senate floor, and these senators have these really long nights that they're there till midnight, and they're hearing bills, and then they're talking about opposing bills, and you're just like, come on, just call our bill, And so I stayed up forever just to capture it, and it was like a quick 10 seconds. They go through it really quick, and it says it passed, and they hit the gavel, and that was it. And I captured it that night, and I just sent it to everyone, and it's like it passed. And I'm sure everybody was in bed. I was probably the only one up waiting for it, but it passed. And so then we just had to wait for it to get to the governor, and he signed it on, I believe, June 13th, June 12th. And then the House Representatives Office, they're going to try to get me an actual copy of the bill. They said we're going to put a request, and they thanked me for bringing it to their office's attention. And it's just an amazing accomplishment to have. And my husband's proud of me.
Oh, I'm proud of you.
Oh, thanks.
Oh my gosh, this is massive.
And my father, he was really proud of me, and he would follow this. He's never really followed legislation, so I would explain where it was, and in the end, he's like, "I'm really proud of you because you didn't stop." Yeah,
it's perseverance. It's hard, because when it gets shut down, there you were in 2021, and here we are halfway through 2023.
Right.
And how does this affect Caden's law and some of these other ones that
with Caden's law, what we had learned, and I think I mentioned it before, is that because custodial interference, there's a law in every state. The tragic death of Caden Mancuso, it had a custodial interference, because based on reading a news story, they had called law enforcement for assistance, and they told them, we can't get a warrant for this. There's nothing we can do. And they just denied that. And same thing with Grayson Kessler. The mother reported the child hadn't been, I believe, returned to school, and they just told her it's a civil matter. There's nothing we can do. But that's not true. These laws have been around forever. And I think it's the same thing for, I believe the child's name was Tate in Colorado, that case of that child as well. Because you report this, and they don't understand custody orders, they don't understand this civil process, and they just want to brush you off by telling you it's a civil matter. Go take care of this, in front of family court. But I'm reporting a crime to you. You should be taking these things a lot more serious than you are. And they do lead to these tragedies where a parent, harms a child or abducts a child, and so that's what the connection that we've made with some of these state tragedies, is that it ties into law enforcement failing to protect the public and protect these children, and not following through with their laws on taking care of the community, addressing these issues. So so that in hopes of the parents that are often denied, or the child's withheld, and it impacts the parent-child relationship. That's what the purpose is to mitigate that. Start holding parents accountable, because as many of us have experienced, there's very little accountability in family court.
Right.
There's so much that they get away with, and it's kind of, you have to pay to play pretty much, and there's no guarantee. You see a different judge every time, and they want to give chance after chance, and there is no makeup time because of how they strategically interfere with your weekend, your summers, and you have to do these filings, you have these retainers you got to continue to pay into, and this is free. You just got to learn how to report a crime and get the DA to prosecute it. And I mean, even if it doesn't go as far as a district attorney prosecuting, I would think it'd be pretty scary if you had a charge pending against you for a felony, which is, I believe, 2 years of jail time or prison time, or I forgot what the fine was. I don't remember, but because if a parent gets a felony, you could be losing your certain benefits, you can be losing certain voting rights, you could lose a lot of things in your state depending on what those are. But parents need to start being held accountable, because they're really hurting the child the most, and these court systems need to realize that these are doing this is harmful to the child psychologically, emotionally, and everything else. So and some parents might say, well, this isn't a fix to parental alienation. Well, I believe it will mitigate a lot of that, because your that parent-child contact issue that they're trying to interfere with or cause could be lessened by parents understanding these laws and enforcing them and using their rights to. So the idea here in Texas is to get the local municipality to pass the ordinance to start creating this ticketing system. And it's like a speeding ticket. And I got a lot of pushback too, like from that representative, of what you're going to inconvenience parents to now have to pay a fine. Well, you know what? If they're speeding,
Bad.
Yeah, if they're speeding, they're gonna learn not to speed because they don't want a speeding ticket. So it's the same thing. If you don't want to fine, then stop withholding the child. And so we that's the response, is like, if no one wants to be given a traffic ticket, then don't commit that offense. And our goal is to lower these occurrences in the state, ensure that kids see both parents. We want to reduce domestic violence because a lot of these calls that are received, they categorize them as domestic disturbances. And this will generate money for the city because, I mean, up to $500, but for small towns, I'm sure they could use that extra money as a ticketing system. But one of the biggest things is that many times when law enforcement come to a house, they're there for about an hour trying to, you know, just understand who's supposed to have the child and understand an order. And it's he said, she said, okay, it's no more about that. It's either you're going to comply with this order and release the child, or I'm gonna write a ticket and you're gonna have to show up to municipal court and pay that fine and explain why you didn't comply with the court order. And you know, and that's it. And so those were the selling points that I would use. But the biggest one was we want to make sure kids are seeing both parents when they should. That's the biggest one.
Very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just great. I'm so happy for you that this went through. And
yeah,
I mean, really, it did go smoothly, even though it took a period of time. It went.
Yeah.
Compared to some other bills that just don't go anywhere.
Right. And so I try to encourage parents to use the same language. I know Rael's doing stuff in Pennsylvania and she's modified it a little bit there, and that bill looks amazing. There's so many bills that have been around that could be amended, and it doesn't take a lot of knowledge. You don't have to be an attorney. You don't have to be, you know, a lobbyist. You can just be a parent that experienced something and something's not working for the community or for the state, and, you know, discuss it, bring it to the attention of the representative. They don't know there's a problem. Some of them, you know, are happily married, never been divorced, never had these high conflict issues, see their children, you know, things like that. So they don't know these problems exist. And you have to, you know, to address the overall issue. They're not there to help an individual person's case, but if you collectively came as a group and said, this is a concern, I've had the issue, they've had the issue, another parent's had the issue, it's a statewide issue, can we work on amending this? And that's what we did. So awesome. I think other states should jump on board. And it's interesting because when we'd have these national parent organization chapter meetings, many of them themselves didn't know about the law and they want to address it somehow. And NPO has gotten on board with supporting the movement on enforcing custodial interference. And you know, we're not trying to make the other parent a felon. We just want some accountability. We want to see our children. That's the biggest thing. And if it means them being held accountable for their acts, then that's a decision on a jury, a judge. You know, we don't pick those penalties or those sentences, but we have a right to report a crime and you know, and to see our kids. So that's the whole purpose, is ensuring that we see the kid and the kid sees us. That's what we want the most.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And there should be accountability. This will probably forward through other things like judicial accountability. This could bring forth more.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to it.
Yes. So, you know, how can people reach you if they have any questions, if they're in their own state and they need help getting there or writing something, a bill?
Right. So we have our national page, which is Interference with Child Custody Coalition. They can send us a private message. Also, if they want to post something anonymously, they can send us a private message. I also have a website called Heroes for Children's Rights, because as a Marine veteran, I pursue the changes and that support the concerns that impact military and service members and things like that. So Heroes for Children's Rights is a website, and we touch on different causes, you know, child abuse awareness, custodial interference, equal shared parenting for fit, willing, and able parents. And you know, we support good laws, but we also oppose laws that aren't particularly well written, you know. And I will say, like, as for Caden's law, that law has a few flaws that we want to work out. So when we talk about Caden's law, you know, we do believe in protecting children, but we want to ensure that all children are protected. And Caden's law currently only addresses protecting children from sexual and physical abuse. It doesn't recognize child psychological abuse. And most recently, we discovered it does not protect children from medical child abuse, like Munchausen by proxy. So that's not included in that. And that's a concern for some parents that we've heard from. So again, we support bills that are protecting all children from harm.
Oh, that's great. Oh, so this Hero for Children's Rights, that's just a website on its own. It's not on Facebook, right?
It is there is a Facebook page for that as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we have state pages on custodial interference. So every state has their particular penal code, and it's got their own penal code number, their own little explanation, or what it's called. Every state page has a support group. So to find that, you would have to identify your penal code. So you can Google like custodial interference Pennsylvania, that's 2904. Custodial interference Florida, that's 787.03. So you can just do custodial interference law Florida, and it'll bring up their penal code number. So each page is named after the penal code, and the cover page is a state flag, so it's easy to identify. And there are some pretty active groups, and then there's some that aren't active. Florida is probably one of the most active groups right now, and that's being led by Chris Felder in Florida. He's also with NPO, and then there's Pennsylvania 2904, and Rael's leading that, and then there's California that has a large group, but they don't have a lot of involvement, and we want to encourage parents to start getting more involved, because we're all experiencing the same thing, but things aren't going to change by themselves. It's going to take, raising awareness and reaching out to your representatives and not leaving it to somebody else.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, thank you so very much for your time. Don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I am your host, Marianne Petra, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with Claudia Ovalles in the future and other exciting guests. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for bringing me back.
Definitely. You'll be back again.